longer. Hold on. Hold on. Okay. We are live and we are streaming.
Okay, so looks like we're ready. This is the Parks and Recreation Advisory Board for the City of San Angelo. It is 3:38 p.m., July 23rd, 2020. I am Chair Lori DeCello, and I would like to call this meeting to order. So welcome everyone. This meeting is being held virtually due to COVID-19. Public comments were to be submitted in writing to Mr. White. Were there any comments?
No.
Okay. The board may request an item to be placed on a future agenda, or for a consent agenda item to be moved to the regular agenda for public comment. So, consideration of approving June 29th, 2020 meeting minutes. Do I have any corrections? Okay, no. Do I have a motion to accept these minutes? I don't hear anybody.
So move.
Who was that?
John Mark.
John Mark? Okay, do I have a second?
I wasn't at that meeting, so I don't know if I can second.
I don't know.
Debbie.
Yeah, I'm gonna say I don't see anyone else. I see Brent, but that's not helping me.
Microphone.
I'm sorry?
Unmute. Let me see if I can unmute. Yeah, Debbie, I unmute.
Second that motion.
Okay.
I finally got on. Jeez.
Okay. All right. All right. Well, let's vote to approve. I don't know, Carl. You're gonna have to look at the pictures. I can't see them on here. If that'll help, or everybody, all in favor, raise your hand and say yes. Yes.
John Mark, you're muted. Okay, I see 5 hands.
5 hands. Okay. All right. So that's unanimous then. All right. Now,
Lori,
in the regular agenda, Carl's asked me to move item number 3 up to the second one. So the discussion of the possible parkland dedication ordinance. Carl, you gonna be able to show me?
Yes, before we do that, I wanted to introduce some folks we have here.
Okay.
Brandon Dyson with the City Attorney's Office, Assistant City Attorney. We have John James, Planning Director. He will help us in the discussion of the parkland dedication ordinance, as well as Hillary Booker. Hillary, are you there? I think Hillary.
Yes, sir. Sorry about that.
Thank you. Okay, let me share the screen. Go to that item. Okay. Or did you read the caption? You may have already.
Yeah, I could do it again. Discussion of possible parkland dedication ordinance and recommending any related matters.
Okay, we've talked about this before and was talked about at the last meeting to put this on the agenda. There's been some discussion of parkland dedication ordinance for the city of San Angelo in the past, and it seems to pop up every time we do a master plan, and it did again this time. And so we wanted to revisit that. So we wanted to explain basically what a parkland dedication ordinance is. Several cities in Texas have it. Not so much in our region, but definitely if you go to the larger cities and the suburbs, you'll definitely see a parkland dedication ordinance, especially cities that are developing quite quickly and they're closely competing with other cities for residences and businesses. So basically, in general, parkland dedication ordinance is a local law that provides either funds or public lands for park development. And that land and when funds are given by the owner and the developer, this is mandated. And we'll go into different aspects of this in terms of advantages. And you can stop me along the way. And John and Hillary here, they have experience with this too. They can help answer questions. Basically, there's several advantages and disadvantages to having that. Before I go into this list, as we look at our system, we've talked about service holes. We have a big service hole in terms of no park in large residential areas in the northern part of the city. In the Bluffs, there's no park. The entire residential area of the Bluffs has no public park. There is some open space, but no public park. The southwest area, the southland area, there's only one neighborhood park in that entire large residential area. And that area is continuing to grow. The northeast, fortunately, we have done some park development there. And I think there is, as that grows out there in the northeast, there is land that's platted for future park development. It's a good thing. We don't necessarily have funds for that development. But if we had had a parkland dedication ordinance, I don't think we would have developed these park service holes, in my opinion. So an advantage is that you don't have to necessarily do a bond issue for funding for parkland acquisition or development because it creates its own funding source through the process of development. Eliminates the lengthy and costly price negotiations for parkland. Involves the developer up front and gets them more committed to the community park system. It allows integration of the subdivision developments before the platting. Provides the marketable amenity to the developer that they don't have to develop. And as we know, we call it the proximity principle. Properties, residential, commercial, they have a higher value the closer they are to well-developed and well-maintained parks, which is a good thing. Provides a communication avenue for purposes where property is difficult to maintain, post-development like trail and greenway corridors, and ensures that some open space will be preserved for each neighborhood. Disadvantages, the subdivider of the development becomes a park planner, not necessarily the professional staff. The subdivider may attempt to dedicate properties of land that aren't really well developed, maybe wetlands, and maybe land, maybe rock outcroppings. Without the cash value option, too many small parcels of land because the dedication is usually a percentage of the subdivision. And I think that could occur here because we don't necessarily develop large areas at one time, do it in small pieces, but it could become part of a larger plat. Usually dollars is part of donation of land and not funds for development. But you still have to find the funds for development. Or to continue with disadvantages, poor design by the subdivider can result in costly repairs and maintenance. That is if they're involved in the design of the park itself. Here's some ones that we're gonna hear if we move forward with this, but the cost of the housing increases for the consumer. Basically, the cost is passed on from the developer to the consumer, purchaser of the homes and properties. The subdivider sees the process as just another regulatory hurdle. Confusion develops over responsibility for maintaining the condition of the site. And then unless specifically identified, maintenance funds do not typically keep land dedicated, as Roger knows quite well. Typical key parts from what I could tell in the research, and John, you're welcome to chime in, Hillary. As I mentioned, it's either fee or property. It's either fee or lands that are put forward as part of this ordinance by the developer. And the fee is usually based on a per dwelling unit in a residential development area or park development. And it's a certain amount of money per dwelling, and it varies from city to city. And in lieu of the fee, it could be parkland, which is basically 1 acre per a certain number of units, a certain number of homes, a certain number of apartments, but typically not in a smaller area, smaller than 5 acres. The parkland dedication is part of the platting of that area. If parkland is provided in lieu of the fee, that property must be qualified for that use, such that it must be property that we can use as parkland. Like I said, it's got to be, it can't be just wetlands and swampland, all rocks and undevelopable is what I'm saying, unusable. The fee collected or land dedicated, platted prior to the issuance of the building permit. So it puts the onus on them to put that up front before they move forward with the building. And of course, the park must be approved by the department, board, and city council. Use of the park fees. Basically, the monies go straight into a park development fund. And that fund is used to either acquire and develop new parks for public access and use. Any related development expenses like design, even land acquisition if needed. Park development budget approved by city council. And there should be a time limit for the use of the expenditures. That is, the city can't just sit on money and not use it for park development. So basically, after we have this discussion, y'all ask questions and we continue this. Where do we go from here? One thing we could do is set up a committee to continue the discussion of this. Strategize how to move forward with it. That should be 2 or 3 board members, city staff, Parks and Recreation staff, and planning and development staff. You also go to council just at some point early in the process to test the waters to see if council's even interested in moving down this road for consideration. Whatever we do, we shouldn't do something really quickly. We should be slow, methodical, and strategize about it, because it's not going to be it's going to be an uphill fight in my opinion. Like I said, I think parkland dedication ordinances are more, you'll see them more often in larger cities and where cities are competing against each other for residents and businesses. I think there's a different mentality here. And I think we're going to get some opposition from some folks on this. So that's all I had. If there's any questions, any more discussion, John and Hillary, y'all might want to pop in. Somebody say something.
This is Hillary Bucher. I'm the planning manager. I don't know if I've met everybody, but I want to say hello. My previous position was with a different city, was a park planner. So my job was to utilize the dedication ordinance. I was in the Dallas-Fort Worth area, so we had this. And it was to ensure that our park resources were not depleted when new residents came to town. But I believe Carl's right. it's a little bit of a different animal here in the city of San Angelo, but I'd be happy to answer any questions about my experience as a script on as well.
Yeah, I would just add that one of the differences, as Carl mentioned, the cities that use it a lot are cities that are fast growing. And so they're basically outgrowing their ability to provide park services. We're not quite in that situation, but that doesn't necessarily mean that it wouldn't be beneficial here. Just like he said, if we had had this 30 years ago, then a lot of those park holes wouldn't exist. And so the way we look at things, in planning is we're looking out 20, 30, 50 years. And so implementing something like this today, it would not make an immediate impact, but it would definitely benefit the community 10, 15, 20, 30 years from now.
Okay. So tell me some of the disadvantages that Cora pointed out. You would be able to rake them out.
Whoever's got the background noise.
I'm sorry, Lori, I didn't hear you. Can you repeat it?
No.
Sure. Well, some of the disadvantages that Carl had talked about, that we would be able to write that in the wording so that we wouldn't have the problem of the developer doing the park himself, and some of those other disadvantages there, getting bad land.
Yeah, I had talked to Brandon this morning. One of the things we had talked about with our ordinance in the previous city was that if they wanted to donate land that was in floodplain, floodway, for example, that would not count as a 1-to-1 match. So if you needed to dedicate 5 acres, essentially there's a ratio that could be floodway, floodplain, because some of our parks are in floodway, floodplain today. It just wouldn't be at the same ratio as high and dry land. So it's one option, as well as I'm sure many other options.
Okay. Does anybody else have any questions? Go ahead.
Good. Hold on. Hold on. Is he muted?
He's not muted, but his audio is bad. I don't know what's wrong.
Kenneth, we can't hear you. Kenneth, we can't hear you, and you're not muted. At least.
I would be interested in being part of a committee to look into this further. I think it's an interesting possibility.
Okay, I think that is one way to move forward. Is just take a step back from the board meeting in a smaller group, just to talk about the different parameters and how we would put it together.
That would make sense. Well, I really think that Steve would be interested in being part of this too, because he's the one that has really talked about this quite a bit. If we could, Carl, if you could send out like an email that we can all possibly get together and have a meeting about it.
Yes. Yes, I can do that. You can set up a committee and
Okay,
meet
so
on Zoom.
we're going to go ahead and establish a committee to discuss this.
Kenneth is waving his hands. He wants to talk, but we can't hear him. I don't know.
No, he's not.
Okay.
I don't think the chat box. But I guess.
Just from my previous experience on the council, and when this last time, there was a lot of pushback from the builders and property owners. I think it might behoove us to see the city council just spend the time to look at it first, before we set up the committee is if it's going to be successful, as Carl said, it's going to take a long time. You need to have the input of the home builders and other stakeholders before you proceed down that road too far. Because I don't remember the last time it was considered, Carl, and it may have been council again, but I just remember it was at least the home impression was something that had been going on behind the scenes and hadn't really been brought out into the open, as I recall. And that was one of the things that concerned them. So I think the more you can bring those stakeholders into the discussion about what you want to do, and to try to be able to show them, and that's one thing a staff could do, is probably be able to show the economic benefit to the community and to the city long term, opposed to, just the immediate impact is the additional cost. And so, and I personally of a dedicated months, but I just know that was my experience previously, and I just think it ought to guide how we proceed. I would be in favor of talking to council about it first, if you really want, before you get too far in the road.
Yeah, and maybe John and I should have a discussion with the city manager's office first.
I think that would probably be wise, and maybe have some conversations with the home builders before you take it to council, and just see how much resistance you get. So,
Right. Yeah, it's got to be the right environment and the right timing to move forward.
so
Probably had the discussion with the city manager.
I just, I support the idea of the park, but I think before we spend hours on committees, hours with best that are run in. Because if council tells you no, they're not interested in it, you wasted all your time.
Yeah, it's dead in the water. Kenneth.
Someone needs to mute their microphone, probably. We're getting a strange sound.
Yeah, and Carl, you should be able to mute people as the host, I think.
I did, but I haven't locked it. I have been muting, but I haven't locked it. Okay, so I think that's good advice, John Mark. Lori?
You might ask Kenneth if he can send a message in the chat function.
I don't know if we have chat. I don't see it here. Maybe because the public wouldn't see it if chat was.
The other option is to log off and log back on. I know that's helped a couple of times, so.
Well, I have to say, I didn't hear anything that John Mark said.
Yeah, it was pretty broken up.
Well, the gist of it is maybe we should have a discussion with council first before we go too far down the road with it. And I kind of added to that. Maybe John and I and Hillary should talk to the city manager first, to see if he's okay with taking it to council, just as a discussion before we spend too much time and effort on this. I believe that's the gist of what I said with my addition. John, are you there?
Yes, I'm here. I agree with that. I think getting together with the city manager and then taking something to council pretty early in the process. Like you said, if they're not interested, we don't want to waste a lot of time on it.
Yeah, and I mean, the council did approve the master plan, but in the master plan, it's just a suggestion. It's not, you know, this is a strategy that other cities use to help address the problem of having enough park services in your city, you know, combined with development. So,
Lori or Carl, I don't know, you may have to translate for me, Carl, but we could pass a resolution to say that the Parks and Recreation Board is interested in forming a committee to look at this, but we wanted to get their input first before we started.
yeah, That could just show that the board is interested in it.
Board is interested in it. It's not just coming out of left field. We could do
Right.
something.
Yeah, and the way the item's been written, discussion of possible parkland dedication ordinance and recommending any related matters. The board could take action and make such a recommendation. I think that would help if we want to try to move it forward.
Okay, so we need a recommendation to investigate this.
Yeah, it doesn't have to be a resolution. Y'all could just make a recommendation. If you wanted, I don't know that, Brandon, I don't know that the board would do a resolution, would they? Brandon?
Like it's like a formal written resolution, but I mean, you could take a vote to recommend to council to pursue this. So
Yeah, it doesn't have to be a resolution. It could just be a recommendation.
Okay.
The only thing I would add to this process, and I don't know if Kenneth is on, forgot again, I know he had something he was really willing to say, so I would like to meet with him before.
Yeah, he got off and he's back on now. Maybe if we can hear him.
I can't unmute him. I can't unmute him. Get it?
He may need to unmute himself. He may be muted on his side.
Well, if I'm the
Can you hear
host,
me now?
yes, yay.
Oh, okay. My wife would like to do that sometimes, but it doesn't seem to work like as easy as this did. No, my words of wisdom were, I think what John Mark said, that we at least approach the commission first and see if there's any interest in it, and then we can go from there.
Yeah, Lori, if the board wants to take action, I'm recommending we do that. That does, like John Mark said, it does show that the board is interested.
Okay, well, I would like a motion to recommend that Carl talk to city council and find out their feelings on this and see if we should move forward on a parkland dedication ordinance. Is that worded correctly for you?
Yeah, I mean, it doesn't have to be that specific. It could just be, I mean, I'm good with that, but it could just be the Parks Recreation Advisory Board recommends.
Okay. I'm looking for a motion to recommend that Carl talk to the city about parkland recommendations.
Do we need a motion on that, or let it just be a recommendation?
yeah, the board someone can make a motion to recommend or to make a recommendation that we review a parkland ordinance with city council, and needs to make that motion and second it and take a vote on it. So
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you, Brandon.
Thank you. Okay, so
It should be
I have a
simple.
motion for that from Allison. Is that correct? Do I have a second?
This is Debbie. I second that motion for the recommendation.
Okay. All right. And can we take, I have a motion and a second. Let's go ahead and take a vote with a show of hands. Carl, you're going to have to see everybody. So everybody in favor say
Call for discussion.
what?
Call for discussion.
Yeah.
Before we
Oh,
take,
I'm sorry.
okay.
Okay, is there a discussion?
We'll see you later, baby.
Okay, that was our discussion, I think.
Okay, all right. So everybody in favor, raise their hand, say yes.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Did everybody, Carl?
Yes.
So passed unanimously since I can't see everyone.
Yes.
Okay,
Okay.
all right. So Carl, you get to review with City Council about this parkland ordinance and see what their feeling is. And now we're going to go to I lost my item. Oh, there they are. Item number 2, the discussion of ongoing, upcoming, and possible projects. Go for it, Carl.
Yes. And so at the last meeting, Steve had asked a question about the 29th Street Sports Complex, what the status, the situation is on that project, and I'll give an update on that. At the same time, several other things have been happening. We've been discussing internally projects. We just did the master plan, and the master plan has a whole new set of priorities that the public has told us that they're interested in. And every time we do a master plan, those priorities change, and they did again. The last time was 2012. We've, city council has changed since the last master plan, and their priorities have changed. And of course, their priorities are based on what the public is saying is important to them. So as time evolves, you just don't stick with one plan. You make that plan evolve as you move along based on the priorities of our leaders and our public. So that got me to thinking about just the larger topic. Let's talk about what projects we've got going on. Let's talk about what's what's now been identified important by the public. And let's talk about, should we consider making some adjustments in what we're doing in terms of projects and move some things up. So that's what this discussion is all about. And I'll move through it quickly. Is everybody seeing master plan facility priorities?
Yes.
Okay. So this is the new list of outdoor facilities that the public identified as important to them. And these are in order. It's straight from the master plan. So just looking at the top 10, number 1 is splash pad, number 2 shade. And so splash pad, that has never shown up that high at all in any of our master plans. So it's number 1 now. Shade to parks, playgrounds and parks, that's now number 2. It's never shown up at all. 3 is aquatic water park. And this survey was done during the winter. It wasn't done during the heat of the summer when splash pads and folks are thinking about splash pads and water parks. But those items have showed up high. Restrooms, number 4. Hike, bike, walk, jog, run trails. Those always show up fairly high in the top 10. Same thing with playgrounds for children. Something that moved up is nature trails. People are remembering the importance of nature and nature trails. Fishing piers and lake access is moved up. The swimming pool is in the top 10. And then number 10 is a large area, nature area and preserves, which can tie in with nature trails. So those are our new top 10. So looking at our currently funded projects, and there's 2 pages of this. I'll go through them quickly. We're doing some bank stabilization work to address some hot spots. When I say hot spots, they're areas that are highly eroded that we've got to do something now, or we're going to lose park property and possibly adjacent road. Doing a set of bank stabilization over close to park headquarters near Locust Street. That one is about to move forward. It's funded. Next is bank stabilization from Oak Street to Concho Avenue. That one's funded, and it does have a TCEQ grant. That one should move forward next year based on the grant funding. And then moving from, if you imagine Concho Avenue and going all around Rio Concho Gardens and Massey Funeral Home, going all the way around that bend where it kind of joins back to Rio Concho Drive, close to the Rio Concho Manor homes. not the high rises, but the homes. That's the next stretch of bank stabilization we want to do because we're losing property there as well as the trail. We estimate that project to be 1.25 million. That also includes a pedestrian crossing at Concho Avenue. And currently we have about 400,000 for that. We need more funding for that. Other projects going on, Brentwood Park renovation, basically $80,000 left with some contingency. Basically everything's bought for that. We're just implementing it and working on the sidewalk now, but we've bought the playground equipment. We bought the pavilion. It's a matter of just implementing that and finishing it up. As you know, we got a grant from the Health Foundation for refurbishing the playground at Untitled Park. That's fully funded now. That'll move forward after Brentwood Park renovation. Following that is Brown Park renovation. Right now, it only has $50,000 to it. We could add more to that. It doesn't get us a whole lot of improvements. Thankfully, Parks has been able to do some improvements there to the turf and the grounds and some other things to do some improvements there, make it more attractive and usable. Santa Rita Park renovations after that. The budget for that's about close to 200,000, but we only have 90,000 available, and that's from half sales tax. We have $1.5 million for the 29th Street Sports Complex renovation. The design for that is complete. I want to talk about that here a little bit later. I think the priorities have changed in terms of what the impetus was originally to do that project. And then we just got a grant for some trail work at the Twin Buttes for off-road vehicles and access roads. Let's see. Next part to that, Lake Nasworthy. Got several projects going. Oh, the Middle Concho boat ramp project has begun. It started last week. They're doing the demo work and site work now. That project's a little over $1 million. The pier replacement, that'll probably be the next project at Lake Nasworthy. Oh, and I didn't mention on this chart, you can see master plan rankings. I put in there what number of those items hit, like Brentwood Park renovation. It hits number 2 priority item, which is shade, which has a shade structure. Number 5 is trails. Number 6 is playgrounds. Number 11, restoring existing playgrounds and parks. So I added those so you can kind of see where these different projects hit with the master plan items. So now there's other improvements coming up. The city has hired Freeze and Nichols, their civil engineers, to do assessment. We met with them out there at all the different boat ramps last week and did a tour to look at all the projects so they can start coming up with an idea of schematics and how much these improvements will cost. Those are moving forward as well. Thankfully, we have a funding source. It's shown right here. That's $6 million from the referendum, and then $666,000, which is the TPWD grant and the city funds. So it's actually more than that, but. Okay, also listed here is we've got a project going on for the design of the sculpture gardens at Sunken Garden Park. What's only funded is the design. That project for the improvements is going to be close to $1 million, possibly more. There'll have to be some fundraising attached to that. So I also wanted to look at what we have in the CIP. For the most part, it's the same projects, but not entirely. They're listed in alphabetical order, but I changed the name of this one. The name of this one is Bart DeWitt Sculpture Area Landscaping. I changed it to Lady of Blue so you know what it was. But if you remember, we've added those new sculptures at Bart DeWitt Park behind Concho Crossing, and it hasn't been landscaped yet. But that project is supposed to be funded entirely by private fundraising. So here again, you see Brown Park and then Glenmore Park restrooms, Kids Kingdom Playground, which is coming up. We need to do the restrooms at Martin Luther King Jr. Park, bank stabilization, as we talked about, Santa Rita. Another project coming up that we'd like to do is that trail along South Concho Park. connecting the river trail to Glenmore Park. We can get a grant for that. And then the sculpture garden improvements I talked about. And then the user park playground. Continuing on with CIP, in the CIP is specifically park improvements. There's a whole series of things to make that more of an official botanical garden. The trail work at Twin Buttes I mentioned. And then we also have the design work for a neighborhood park in one of our service holes in the southwest off Twin Mountain Drive. What's not in this, so that's what's in the CIP. So what's not in the CIP, which we will add for the next round, splash pad. It used to be in the CIP. We took it out. We're going to put it back in. Shade for playgrounds and parks, water park, and then I'm calling it a wilderness nature trail preserve. We have a location where we could do that to provide better public access. It already exists. We just need to improve the access. So I'm going to show this, but it's not blessed by council. So it's just an idea that I had. So looking at the 29th Street Sports Complex, that the funding for that was a 1.75 million. Dates back to 2005. We had gotten direction from the previous council to move forward with the design of that project, which was basically adding some more practice fields, softball, baseball fields, because at the time, based on the master plans and public need, practice fields was higher on our list of priorities. Since the last master plan, those have moved down fairly significantly. Let me go back to that list. 27, baseball fields, softball fields. So the thought is, that property belongs to the Corps of Engineers. We need to do something out there. So the thought is, let's demo the old dilapidated restrooms, concessions. We may have to do some asbestos abatement, kind of dress up the site, make it level, make it safe. Look at the Little League field that's there. Northern Little League does use it. Let's refurbish that, re-irrigate that. Let's refurbish the 2 existing practice fields. Let's do some site work, make sure everything's accessible, safe, and secure, and leave it at that. I think that would be $500,000. Now there still is interest, council has interest in connecting Kirby Park across the river to this property with a bridge, which would be cool. We tie those 2 properties together. But if we do that, we have to think, when you build a bridge, it's got to lead to somewhere. And build that bridge, that crossing there, it doesn't take you anywhere other than open space, which is fine. You can go out there and still use it for practice. If you're at Kirby Park's full, you can cross that bridge, get to that low area at 29th Street, and you can practice, you can fly a kite, do whatever. So it could work. So the reason I say that, this is an idea, we may not be able to free up that much money if we do that bridge crossing. So I don't want to look at so much money. I don't want to look at so much at how much money can we free up in terms of priorities. The priorities have changed. I don't think we're going to be able to move forward with the project that we had designed to put in new restrooms, the pavilion, the batting cages, do a more involved refurbishment of the fields there. But we definitely need to do something. So don't look at this. don't look at this coming up as so much as let's take that money and spend it for these improvements. So the next slide is basically showing these are the projects that are coming up. This is the estimated budget for these projects. This is how they rank with the master plan. This is what funding is available or not available. Do we need to put more effort in some of these projects to find funding for them based on their new ranking in the master plan? That was the exercise I was going through as I was doing this. So you see these projects, bank stabilization, You know, we've got some funding there for it, but not all we need. I don't know where we could get the rest of the funding. Shade for parks and playgrounds. You know, we can add some shade to the more popular playgrounds where we don't have it, and at some of the park spots where we know folks use around picnic areas, and add some more trees for shade. We keep hearing, you know, time after time, year after year, the community's desire to add restrooms at MLK Park. Now the splash pad's the number one item. You know, do we need to make strong efforts to find a place and find the backing and the funding to do it? Kids Kingdom Playground, we know that's coming up. It's got to be replaced in the next 2 or 3 years. The Junior League has shown an interest in working with us on that. And then do we want to add more money to the Brown Park renovation, the Santa Rita Park renovation, the trail along South Concho? We can get a TPWD grant, but we'll need about $40,000 in matching for that. And then do we want to find some money to better develop the wilderness trail area? And it's a cool area off of, what is that, Brent? Country Club Drive, South Country Club Road? It's by Pecan Creek Pavilion. It's a large wooded area, lots of trees, lots of wildlife. There's trails out there now, but it's not well known by the public or used. The thought is to go in there and put in a parking area, maybe near Pecan Creek Pavilion, with the trailhead, and improve some trails there and get folks in that natural area. So that was the thought. You know, we had done for a couple of years. We had Lori, remember the committee we had looking at all of our unfunded projects? We had a committee kind of brainstorming how to, you know, prioritize those based on the public's priority and the council's priority. And so maybe we need to do that exercise again, is what I'm getting at. So I think I'm done talking.
Well, Carl, some of the projects that you have listed that are already funded can easily incorporate this shade to the parks and playgrounds when you go to do, where is it?
Yeah.
Brentwood and Unidad, you can make sure that they're getting the shade that's
good point.
needed.
Exactly.
So that does kind of incorporate what some of the public wants. Now, I don't know if we're going to go to Kids Kingdom and we have some outside people interested in helping with that. You at one time had said that there's a piece of land. Would that be a good place to put a splash pad nearby there and incorporate that all together?
Yeah, I think that's definitely an option. I mean, it's right across from the visitor center. I mean, you know, that's prime visitor area. The public loves that area. Our residents love it. It seems like it would be a good option to add a splash pad there. If we totally redid that area, keep the pavilion there, redo the pavilion, incorporate with a new playground, a splash pad, it could be a really cool spot. Unidad College Hills Park was another location we looked at for a splash pad. So, you know, that's not the only location we've talked about, but I think it could be a cool spot for a splash pad. Kids Kingdom.
Well, do we have any other comments or interest? I know that some stuff was also talked about a splash pad near the lake.
Yeah, I guess a couple of ideas out there. One was maybe adding one near the beach, but I don't think it's just, I don't think that's the best spot for one, but also Spring Creek Marina, the guy who has that lease talked about adding one on his property, his lease property. And we could consider other locations.
All on these non-funded, has anybody been approached or thought about who might be interested?
On the splash pad, Yeah, there's
On any of the non-funded projects.
non-funded. Yeah, well, to some extent, yes. Like I said, the Kids Kingdom Junior League has expressed interest, so I think they could help us raise funds. Splash Pad, HEB has expressed interest a couple of times. We just need to approach them again if we want to move forward with it to see if they're still on board. I'm trying to think of others. We can get a grant for the trail work. The Santa Rita Park, I know the homeowners there, they've talked about when it's time to do this project, we're going to help with fundraising. So I think we can make some ground there. But, with the bank stabilization, it's harder to get funding for. So I think we can have some success in getting other funding. In other ways, I think it's going to be more difficult. And that's why I was trying to find a way, could we free up some money and to address some of these higher priority needs? The restrooms year after year, council's asked to try to do that. And I want to try to find a solution for that. I want to try to find the funds and make it happen.
I don't know.
So, Laura, the only thought is, do you want to have that reestablish that committee to look at the unfunded priorities?
Well, I don't mind doing that. I just don't know if we're going to be able to solve the problem for the restrooms. Do you know of any kind of federal health grant that would help with restrooms?
We can try to do more research. It's
Yeah.
just not a very attractive thing to grant. I think the Health Foundation would help with that. It's definitely health related, but we just got the grant for the unit at playground. So we can't go back to them anytime soon. I don't think.
Maybe I missed it, but when are we planning on doing, is this the next 5 years on these projects?
Well, I would hope for, yeah, because that's basically the span of the master plan is 5 years.
I don't know, Carl. We could go ahead and see if anybody would be interested in sitting on a committee to help move, but I don't know if it'll make any difference whether we move the money, try to find money, move it, whatever. I know that we can incorporate some of the items that the people want, but I don't know.
Well, I might be able to free up some money from 29th Street, but I just have to get the blessing of some of the council members on that. So maybe I could try to see where we stand on that and continue this discussion at the next meeting if we've made progress there.
Maybe.
Well, just one comment on those, and I know that a lot of this has to do with the priorities from the new master plan and particularly the splash pad, but I also think that, for example, the MLK restrooms has been an issue for decades. And so I don't think we ought to, just because there's a different change in priorities necessarily, particularly a need that's been identified time and again by council as something they want to address, should necessarily just be bumped down. That's just the comment I would make, because to a certain extent, you've made commitments, or at least you've made promises, maybe not commitments, to try to do something about some of those projects like that. So, I would just hate to see the priority on getting, if they're non-funded, it would seem to me not really be trying to work on like MLK or other issues first before we'll jump straight to the splash. That's my personal opinion.
I have to agree with him, especially now that I heard him.
You might agree with him more if you heard him more.
Well, so I don't know, Carl. I'm willing to work with you to try to figure out how to possibly get in more funding for that, but I don't know where to start to look. And if council could even help us with the direction on it, that would be all right.
Yeah, and I'm not necessarily looking for a recommendation now. I'm just trying to keep this conversation going, especially when it kind of was brought up, what are we doing with 29th Street? That project's just been stalled. So maybe that just needs to, we just need to figure out what are we doing with that first.
Okay. Yeah,
My suggestion is that I think you said you could use 500,000. You could get that usable and presentable.
Yes, but that doesn't count the bridge that.
Well, is the bridge necessary right now?
Well, it is if council says it is.
Well, I guess so, but have they said that?
Yes. The council member of that district.
Okay.
Now that bridge is going from 29 to Kirby. Is that where it's?
Yes. I mean, it is a cool thing. I mean, it would open up basically Kirby Park. The crossing would be very close to where folks would be. You just cross over and you've got a huge open space.
So what does a crossing like that cost?
It depends on if you can get a bridge for free, but you're looking at least 300,000, probably 400,000, and cheaper if you could get, some of it for free.
Yeah. So that's going to leave you about 415,000.
Yeah, in that case. So yeah, that's not a sure thing. So I don't know that I want to speculate too much on that yet until we clarify that. And so I wasn't so much looking for solutions. I was in these charts, I was trying to find solutions to fund these, but at this moment now at the meeting, I'm not necessarily looking for funding solutions. It's more of a matter of exercise of, reestablishing priorities. It does tie back to the exercise we did the last 2-3 years. We took the list of all of our unfunded projects and, high priority, medium priority, low priority. What do we want to focus on? And so maybe the thought is, do we need to redo that exercise with the committee or just in the board meeting? So we don't have to have a recommendation today.
Okay, and maybe once you find out about 29th Street, that you can come back and maybe we can do that exercise at one of the board meetings.
Okay.
All right. Well,
Yes.
Another quick question. What are some of the options on restrooms at MLK? Is that the middle of the ground there, or is that the cheap end, or?
That's the lower end. What I've got here, it looks high because you got to add the water lines, the sewer line, all the utilities, electrical, the pad, the site work, lift station, and it's a prefab unit like we have, very similar to we have at Jaime Padron Park. So it's on the lower, it's a smaller unit. It's the same thing basically we have at Jaime Padron Park.
At which park?
Jaime Padron Park. It used to be, in your days, it was Rio Vista Park.
Yeah, Jaime Padron. Yep, I got you.
By Southside Recreation. We renamed it when we redid it.
I just couldn't understand what you were saying.
Okay. Remember the police officer who was killed in action. Okay, Lori. Do you want to move on to the next item?
yeah, well, it's I have 437. Do you want to get in at maybe one of the parks or two?
Roger and Mike can move through it pretty quick. Roger?
Okay.
Yeah, Carl, I can get through them very quickly. You just keep the slides going.
Okay. Just say next.
Next.
Okay.
Okay.
All right. So hello, everyone. I hope everyone's doing fine. One of the goals I think that we had in trying to go through this procedure of showing you some of these parks that we have is just to get you a little more familiar with the location and what some of the amenities are at the site. So the first one we're going to talk about is the El Paseo de Santa Angela. We just call it the Paseo internally, but it's located over off of Orient Street and Avenue D. It's just west of the Fort Concho area, really adjacent to the farmers market area. There's a lot of events held primarily through the Civic Events Division. In fact, they take care of the pavilions, the 2 pavilions that are on site, but we take care of the landscape beds. There's also quite a few electrical pedestals that are used for events, as well as for Concho Christmas lights. That area is about 8 acres in size. Last year, we went in and added some trees. We did quite a bit of improvements with the irrigation system that was in place, as well as with turf renovations. We do feel that that site's in good condition, and we want to continue to invest. Okay, go ahead and go to the next slide. You can see where the location is, right next to Farmers Market area. There's Los Panchitos on the south side. Those are the pavilions on the south portion of the site.
We lost that tree recently.
Yeah, we did through the storm. Here again, some more landscape beds, some of the open space that's there. Keep going.
It's the next park.
Okay. Is there any questions about the Paseo? If not, I'll move on. Okay, the next park is going to be Firefighters Memorial City Park. This is a park that I used to play in when I was young, many years ago. It's located off of 315 East Tuig Avenue, right off of Rio Concho Drive. It's in the downtown area, off of East Concho Avenue and Magdalene. It's a smaller park. It's about 4.8 acres. We do have a pavilion, landscape beds, playground, and open space. That site was renovated back in 2009, 2010. It was an in-house project, which means that we installed everything at the site pretty much. There's now an old fire truck art piece that's there. We do have a fitness equipment, walking trail. It's in excellent condition, and obviously we'd want to continue to invest in that park. It's a very well-used park. You can see where the location is on the map in front of you, right next to the old fire station, adjacent to the Concho River. We get a lot of people that are walking down the trails that go through that area. Okay, next slide.
It sees more people now that the restaurant's there. And
yeah, exactly. And so, yeah, over the years, we've just tried to continue to maintain that site at a high level because of the location, because of the use that it gets, and people seem to appreciate that. Go ahead, next slide. You can see some of the amenities there, the equipment piece. There's a monument there for the firefighters. There's a staircase going up to the playground, and then just the open space that's there. Any questions about the old park?
That fireman sculpture was the one that was in front of City Hall some years ago.
Okay, if not, we'll go on to the next one. The next park is Glenmore Park. It's located off of Paint Rock Road or Avenue L. It's just south of the old Fire Training Center. It's kind of a mid-sized park. It's 6 acres. It does have a pavilion, playground, lighted tennis and basketball courts. We do have portable toilets at the site, similar to what we have over at MLK Park that we were just talking about. We do have a boat and canoe ramp launching site that we put in a couple of years ago. There's quite a bit of open space. There's baseball fields out there that get used regularly. We did the improvements back in 2005. So we're looking at 15, 16 years ago when that site was renovated. It's still, in our opinion, in excellent condition. And obviously would want to continue to invest in that site.
And that's the park we'd like to connect the river trail all the way down from Bell Street to this park.
That's correct. The next slide. You can see some of the amenities. There's the pavilion, the basketball and tennis courts that are there. Nice, well-used playground on site. Next slide. We have trees. We just recently put a bench swing right next to the river. I did a Leisure Time article on it, and we've had a lot of people say that they enjoy the bench swing, so we've added a few of them along the river, and that was one of the sites as well. But it's a really beautiful park. If we could just find a way to get rid of the vultures, it would probably be one of the best.
Yeah. It's like a permanent home over there across the river.
It's been like that since I started here. Yes. Okay, any questions about Glenmore Park? The next park would be Harmon Park. This is also referred to as Picnic Bend. It's at 1201 Veterans Memorial Drive. It's right adjacent to our office. It's along the Concho River, just south of 14th Street. It's approximately 14 acres. It kind of winds around through the river. It has an old cinder block restroom with old metal playground equipment. There is a 9-hole disc golf course on site. Here recently, we didn't have hardly any of the trail lights working through that area. So we started looking at some of the new and improved solar LED trail lights. We've been quite impressed with those. So we've made more purchases to continue using the solar LED trail lights throughout that area, as well as moving all the way towards Central. And then hopefully we'll also be looking at using those from basically where Firefighters Memorial City Park is all the way to Bell Street. Actually not back, but next year we hope to do some improvements to the turf and the irrigation system that has an old system in place. We do have some funds to try to do some improvements there, especially to try to keep a lot of the trees alive through that area. It has some beautiful trees there along the river. In our opinion, it's in fair condition, and we do feel like we want to continue to invest. It has a nice trail that goes through that. We've made some improvements the last few years to that trail. And as Carl may have mentioned to you before, or he may mention it right now, one of the goals would be to continue that trail from 14th Street all the way to 19th Street and maybe all the way even to Edmond Drive where Kirby Park is located. Next slide. You can see there kind of in that bend on the north or the top of that picture is basically where City Lumber is. And then you can see Veterans Memorial Drive, how it winds through basically to where our office area is. Next slide. You can see the old restroom. If you look close enough on the bottom picture, you'll see some of the old equipment that's still around. Obviously, if we had the funds, it'd be great to be able to put something new in there, but there's still times when people are over there using the old equipment. Next slide. And here again, you can just see some of the open space. You have the disc golf that goes through there that gets quite a bit of use. So it's a nice area. We have a lot of people who use the trail through there for walking, jogging, and just basically strolling through the park. Okay, next slide. Any questions on Harmon? Okay, if not, the last park that we'll talk about is Kirby Park. It's located off of Edmond Drive, right across the river from the East 29th Sports Complex that we were discussing earlier. It's along the Concho River. The north and south side of Edmond Boulevard is where we have this park. So a lot of times internally, we refer to it as Kirby North or Kirby South. The area is about 15 acres. It was completely established basically in 2006. It has a very large pavilion on the north side and a smaller pavilion on the south side. It has playground equipment, a fishing pier, walking trails. We have a rose and perennial ornamental wildflowers and turf demonstrations in cooperation with the Extension Service and with Allison at that site. There's a hockey rink, a skate bowl. We just recently completed the 25,000 gallon rain harvest tank on the north side pavilion. It's in very good to excellent condition, and obviously we want to continue to invest. It is one of our highest used parks in town in comparison to all the other areas that we have. Next slide. You can see on the map, north side of Edmond is where the large pavilion is, the fishing dock almost on the very top part, and over to the kind of the left, almost where the houses begin, is the rose demonstration. And then on the south side, obviously the hockey rink, the skate bowl. We did work with Allison on a perennial trial that's also on the south side. Lots of trails. It gets lots of use, not only under the pavilion or the playground, but a lot of people go there to walk because it is connected from the north to the south, especially underneath. A lot of people go underneath the bridge where Carl is marking it there. Okay, next slide.
Hold on. And talk about a bridge across from Kirby to 29th Street. We're talking somewhere in here, maybe here or here, but that's what we're talking about. And this lower area of 29th Street is all flat. Wouldn't take much to make it fairly smooth, but it's not irrigated.
You can see some of the amenities there. On the top left is the large pavilion. You have the playground on the right. We've tried to add some really neat components into that playground. It's a little different from others. The kids seem to really enjoy it. Next slide. Yep. There's the 25,000 gallon rain harvest tank that's now connected. We use drip irrigation to go to all the trees on that side of the park with that tank. You can see the rose garden there. On the top right, we also have in the past had a pretty good amount of wildflowers in the late winter, early spring. That's the bottom right picture next to the rose garden. And so we do have irrigation out there. We have planted some wildflowers into that area as well. Okay, next slide.
Yeah, that's it. It's the last one. Oh,
that's
sorry.
it.
No, that's the last one.
Yeah, and there you go. There's the south side. You have the hockey rink, the pavilion, soccer fields, and the skate bowl as well. Any questions about any of the parks, including Kirby Park?
I've got one that's kind of a general question. After looking at all these, how many sites do we have located for the shade project?
For the shade?
For all the shades and all, we're going to do all of them, or?
But yeah, you can't just do it everywhere. I'm
Right.
looking for this. But just like Lori said, as we do these newer projects, we can incorporate shade with those. So I'm not counting those, but outside of those, I think my list, Mike and I worked up, was like 5 different sites. Mike, are you there?
Yeah, I know one Carl was, I believe, at Kids Kingdom.
Yes.
One, I don't know if Kirby Park was on. I believe it may have been on that list.
He mentioned it on his list.
Yeah.
Spots here and there.
So roughly about 5 or 6 sites that have been identified.
Yeah, not counting the ones that we have on our list to already be in the works.
Okay.
And I think we need to distinguish between the shade, whether it's shade in the park or it's actually shade on the playground as well, because in some of the areas we have more than enough shade in the park, but the playground is exposed. And so that may be like that particular park may be one that we choose to do some type of shade structure. Whereas in others, it may just be more planting of trees, larger trees, that could provide shade in and around an area.
Okay.
Well, I would like to make a comment that when you guys keep up these parks, I was walking on the river the other day. I forget what day it was, Tuesday, and the mowers came by. It was really nice to know that our people are very considerate of the pedestrians and the people using the park itself, because he pulled over, shut it down so that he wasn't, throwing stuff around, and waited for all of us to leave, and then he went on his way. So I want to thank you for your employees doing a really nice job.
Yeah, for the most part, we have a wonderful set of employees with the Parks Division. They take a lot of pride in their work. Every once in a while, some will forget, and we'll get that phone call about them coming right beside them. But here again, we try to continually remind them not only about the pedestrians, but about some of the vehicles, the vehicle traffic, all the different things like that that can really be a concern when you're trying to service or maintain something and have a lot of people there.
Well, they do a nice job, and thank you.
Well, thank you for the comments.
Do we have any other comments? All right, Carl, go ahead.
That's our last slide. So future agenda items, we may, depending on what the conversation is with John and me and the city manager on the parkland dedication ordinance, and then maybe something on the project priorities, depending on what direction we get on the 29th Street project.
Okay.
And there may be other items that come up, but are there any thoughts on any future items?
The one at the lake signs, if that'll be ready for next time. If not,
Yeah,
I don't know. I just don't want it to go away. So
yeah.
I'm just reminding.
Debbie, are you here?
Yes, I think we're going to talk with, there's several lake board members on a committee with the city manager, and we were going to talk with the city manager some about that, I believe, Carl, and then we'll report back.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm trying to remember, when's our next meeting? The lake
The
meeting.
First Thursday of every month.
August 5th.
Should be the,
August
yes.
22nd. Yeah.
Oh.
So Thursday. I think it's Thursday.
Yeah, look like August 5th.
Yes.
So yeah, we may have something to report for that next board meeting.
Mm-hmm. The other thing I thought of, Carl, when y'all were talking about trees is, when I'm in a lot of other cities walking around their city parks, they have a memorial program where people can buy trees and plant them in different areas where the city needs to plant them with a little memorial plaque on the bottom. Have we ever done anything like that?
Yes, we have that program, and we can present that at the next meeting just to help get the word out about it. But
that's a great idea.
And actually, we might be able to get with if he has the time, public information to do a short video on that, because the better time to plant trees would be fall in the winter. So
right, good to talk about it now.
Mm-hmm. Yes, exactly. Okay.
Yeah, Carl and I usually do our leisure time article about this time of year as well on that program That way, if there's anybody interested, hopefully they would sign up before October or November.
And we do get some. I mean, it's not a lot. We do get some.
Yeah.
But yeah, it wouldn't hurt to push that again.
Yes.
So I'll add that. I'll add that.
Okay. Do we have any other comments? Okay, I'm looking for a motion to adjourn.
I'll make a motion that we adjourn our meeting. It's Debbie.
Okay, and a second.
Kenneth, if I'm still on.
Hey,
You are.
I can hear everybody.
You hear
Okay,
me?
I have a motion and a second, so it's 4:58. Let's adjourn the meeting. All right.
Adios.
Thank you all.
All right. Thank you.
Carl, I have a quick question for you. Are you still there?
Yes, sir.
You sent out a deal the other day if we were interested in, did you get my reply?
Yes, sir. I got it. Yeah, I already forwarded your request. I thought I replied to it.
Okay, I'm not sure if it went, I was kind of curious if it went through because I was having a little trouble here with the computer.
Yeah, sorry. I thought I replied, but I let the city clerk know. So yeah, I'm not sure when it's going to council. The terms expire in December, so
Okay.
it may not be this next
I just
meeting.
want to make sure it went through, yeah.
Yes, sir. You're good. Thank you.
Okay,
Okay.
thank you.
Thank you.
Let's see. Okay, I gotta end everything.